Gino, welcome to the show.
Thrilled to be here, Doug. Great to see you.
Thank you so much for joining me. I know you have a jam-packed schedule, and one of the great things I've learned from you so far is how to protect that calendar and be disciplined with my time. Before we dive in today, I just want to do a brief intro, and then if you don't mind adding, I think most people know who you are from Traction, but the reason we wanted to chat today was more around entrepreneurship and your new book, Entrepreneurial Leap. Do you have what it takes to become an entrepreneur? Anything you want to add to the intro?
Well, I don't think so. Maybe the one thing I would say is just, I am a guy who is obsessed and passionate about entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship, and that's why I exist. And it has been a 30-year obsession, 3 decades of this. And I'm just so thrilled in this last year and a half, and for the next at least 8.5 years, that I'm devoting my energy to now helping entrepreneurs in the making. I'm very excited and eager to help spawn and find and create as many new entrepreneurs as possible.
And before we get into the book, I wanted to get your take on what entrepreneurship really means. Because I think if you look at social media, it's kind of this hot term and it's mostly, people Ferraris, living the dream. But what does entrepreneurship really mean to you?
Yeah, that's such a great question, a great place to start, because the definition, there are 1,000 definitions. So this is just my definition. So we have to be careful that this isn't the end all be all. And there are people that get offended by different definitions because they're trying to fit themselves into something like this because, everybody wants to be a freaking entrepreneur. It's all the media hype and all the, the sizzle around it. It's just like everyone wanted to be a rock star in the 70s and 80s. This is the new cool thing, when it's not all it's cracked up to be. And you either are or you aren't. But in my humble opinion, an entrepreneur is a person who sees a need, an opportunity, an idea in the world and takes a risk to start a business, to fill that need, to solve that problem, to bring that value to the world, and builds an organization with people to make that happen. And so that would be my definition.
Now, how does it differ? And I know that this is covered in the book, between someone that's a solopreneur and an entrepreneur. Where do you see the difference between those two?
Yeah, and I'm going to give a little context as I go into this answer, because the way I wrote the book is in 3 parts: confirm, glimpse, and path. And there's a psychology behind that linear approach. And so we first must confirm that person is an entrepreneur. We then show them a glimpse, assuming they are, and then we show them a path. Well, you're asking a confirm question right now, and I kind of want to anchor that, because one of the ways I help somebody confirm if they're a true entrepreneur, it's first by making sure that they have the 6 essential traits, and we can come back to that. But I teach something called the entrepreneurial range. And if you can picture in your mind this arc, and on the far left side of the arc is the term self-employed, and on the far right side of that arc is the term true entrepreneur. And so if you picture this, anyone that owns a business, anyone that is self-employed is somewhere on that range. And so the people on the far left side of the range are these solopreneurs, sole proprietors, somebody with a side hustle, a freelancer, somebody with a lifestyle business, somebody that buys one franchise business. And then all the way to the right are the greatest entrepreneurs of all time that have built empires. Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, Walt Disney, Henry Ford, and I could keep going. And so anyone that owns a business is somewhere on that entrepreneurial range. And if you have the 6 essential traits, then you are on the right half of that range. And I consider you a true entrepreneur. So, a social media influencer that's making $1 million a year, oh man, what a life. Amen and hallelujah for that life. But I don't consider that person an entrepreneur. It's like an actor that makes $3 million a year that all they do is act. They're a great actor that gets paid really well. I don't consider them an entrepreneur. I consider them self-employed, but I don't consider them an entrepreneur. Just one person's humble opinion.
Well, one thing I love, and it's something I come back to, and I have this fundamental belief that entrepreneurs have a responsibility to make an impact. And when they stay true to that, it's almost exponential because the businesses they typically will run tend to help others, tend to like better communities and just grow at large. It's where we see that scale or the world change is from true entrepreneurs, people on that far side you mentioned. Now, one of the things you cover, and please by all means use this as a good way to introduce the 6 essential traits, but you mention entrepreneurs being nature versus nurture, like you are an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Where did that realization come from? And was there any specific event where you start or patterns you started to see that helped form that and the 6 essential traits?
Yeah. So what it is, as I mentioned earlier, it's 30 years of history. Okay. And so I have this ability to see patterns and trends, and I have OCD. And so the detail that I'm able to absorb and process is pretty high. And so in 30 years, in working with thousands of entrepreneurs and observing entrepreneurs and watching what worked and what didn't, that's how the 6 essential traits bubbled to the surface. And then testing and honing and refining and learning and getting feedback for 3 years in the last 3 years around those 6 essential traits and validating them. That's how I realized that those are the 6 essential traits. And every great entrepreneur, true entrepreneur, they wholeheartedly agree that those are the 6 essential traits they possess. That's part one. Part two, to your question, I believe you're born with them. I don't believe they can be taught. And listen, I hope I'm wrong because I know it's a debatable topic, but let's hope I'm wrong and you can learn those 6 essential traits. Listen, amen and hallelujah. There'll be more entrepreneurs, but I don't believe it for a second. So on that note, let me give you the 6 essential traits, and then I'll talk about why I believe you're born with them. And so the 6 essential traits, and as I share them, I always urge your audience to just kind of scan themselves as I share them and check the boxes and see if you have these 6 essential traits. So they are visionary, passionate, problem solver, driven, risk taker, and responsible. And there's a great free assessment you can take on the website, e-leap.com, the Entrepreneur in the Making assessment. Go take it. If you score 90 or higher, you're probably an entrepreneur in the making. But the point is this: how do I know you're born with them? Again, I've worked with thousands of entrepreneurs, business owners, people running businesses, and I've seen the people that want to so desperately be entrepreneurs and run businesses. And I've watched this with second generation business owners where the mom or dad was this incredible entrepreneur, passed the business to the child, and sadly, they did not have those 6 essential traits. And the organization just kind of bumped along or went out of business. So having seen it so many times and realizing that I can't teach it to people, and I've tried and they've tried to learn it and they can't. And then I just have a strong belief after 30 years of seeing this so many times. And so my best example is using the 6 essential trait, responsible. Okay. And I really believe that's one of the 6 that all true entrepreneurs have. Well, here's how I know it's nature over nurture and it can't be taught. And so picture a family and you out there listening right now, picture everyone you know in your life. You can literally put them in one of 2 camps. When something happens to them, they either blame everyone else or they take total responsibility for their problem. And right now you're all going, yep, that's him, that's her, that's him, that's her. So picture a family with 4 children. Well, you out there, you have brothers, sisters, siblings, possibly. And if you do, you can put your siblings in different camps. So how is it that in a family with 4 children, some of them take responsibility and some don't? They're in the same household, raised by the same parents, same upbringing, yet some take responsibility, some don't. It's just inherent. It's in your DNA, as are the other 5 traits.
Are there any that tend to stick out to you more? I mean, when you went through the traits, there's some I can picture, even people in the community, especially the risk-taking one, that stand out as some big red flags. Like if you can't check this box, there's a good thing you're better as an employee or something else.
Yeah. So I love that. I get asked that often. And unfortunately, there's no weighting to these 6. They are all equally important. There's no one that's more important than the other. We've been talking about responsible. Take that away and you're just not going to succeed because you're going to spend the first 2 years blaming everyone. Your employees are going to leave you. They're going to get sick of you blaming them for everything. So to your point about risk taker, again, they're all equally important. Some have more sizzle, like it's kind of cool to have a visionary trait, you know, and responsible trait isn't so exciting. But what's important about risk taking is equal importance. Everybody interprets risk taking for an entrepreneur as the day they quit their job and take their leap. When I would suggest that's like a big nothing in the grand scheme of a risk taker, because that was the easy decision. The risk-taking trait comes into play over the next 10 years when you have to make 6 decisions a day, and 1 out of 6 is to save your company every single day and make really brutally tough decisions that could potentially put you out of business, firing your top salesperson and losing 15% of your top line. These are all the risk-taking decisions that a true entrepreneur needs to make on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And if you don't have the balls, or whatever the female version of balls are, to make these tough decisions, you're just not a risk taker, and it's probably not the right thing for you. Because if you freeze at the sight of tough decisions and get caught up in analysis paralysis, you're going to go out of business, because you've got to move so fast. And you know, some of your decisions are going to be horrible and wrong. Most should be good. You know, as long as it's a little more than half, you're going to be fine. But that's where risk taking really shows up. It's not just about the day you start your business.
How did you hone that? Because I can imagine some of that is developed skill. You're innate with it, but how did you improve your ability to assess risk and not get stuck in analysis paralysis and say, I'm going to go this course, and then if it doesn't work, go this one? How did you hone that skill?
Yeah, so it's interesting, because again, you can't. So I'll give you a couple insights, and I do give some insights in the book, but my point is, these are essential traits. You're born with them. You don't learn how to be a risk taker. You inherently, naturally take risks. So one of the tools I talk about is a Kolbe. And I'm not going to teach Kolbe on this podcast. We would need 30 minutes. But one of the aspects of your Kolbe profile is your level of quick start. And that measures your level of innovation and risk taking and things like that. There's other factors, but it's just always been my nature. I do crazy shit. You know, I take big risks. I've done stupid things my whole life. It's just my nature. And so it's not like somebody taught me to make tough decisions. And then there's this this military discipline that's called, when you have the 70-70 factor or something like that, where if you have 70% of the facts and you believe you're 70% right, make the decision. Well, it's not like that something like that teaches me to make a tough decision, but it's a great example where if you can't make a decision when you have 70% of the facts and you feel 70% right, that's a sign that you're probably not a risk taker. So these are more like data points and learnings to determine if you are, but you can't learn to be a risk taker. There's just people that freeze when it comes time to make a tough decision. And amen and hallelujah. That takes all types in the world, and not everyone is a risk taker.
Well, I don't think any entrepreneurial organization would survive if we were all entrepreneurs.
That is for sure. And we need all types. And for what this is worth, you know, that's an opportunity for me to say, I believe 4% of the world are true entrepreneurs, which means 96% aren't. The world needs the other 96%. And being an entrepreneur is not all it's cracked up to be. Most die broke. Okay. It is a wild and crazy life. It's a wild and crazy life. We're wild and crazy people. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but man, there's nothing easy about it.
Well, that leads me to another thing you bring up in the book about passion. And I see this a lot, especially right now with so much uncertainty, is like a lot of people's passion has been crushed. What for you, and where along your journey did you start to uncover the importance of passion within an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Oh man, that prompts me to go in so many different directions. I'm going to try to focus myself here. So, you know, passion shows up in 2 places in this book. First of all, I've already shared the first place, that it's one of the 6 essential traits. But in the traits, it's that you're a passionate person. The word is passionate, not passion. And so what this means is you are a person who's just passionate about whatever you're interested in. You just are a really passionate person. And we've all met people that have no passion, okay? And it's okay. It's some do, some don't. Later in the book, when I talk about path, because again, I want to anchor each one of these questions in the right part of the book. So confirm, glimpse, path. In path, I write an entire chapter on passion, the importance of passion, how to find your passion, 7 exercises for finding it, because I believe it's vital. And it's the number one reason you're going to succeed. Because when you get your ass kicked as an entrepreneur, which happens often, the only reason an entrepreneur gets back up is passion, because it makes no logical sense to get back up and keep doing this thing that's borderline impossible. But it's our passion that drives us. So all that said, it's vital. So it's not so much about, how you worded it. I don't remember your exact words, but it's not about, I can't remember how you asked the question, and it's not entirely relevant. The point I'm trying to make is you start a business within your passion. And this is such a hot, crazy topic for some reason. As of late, I've been teaching it for over 2 decades, but passion doesn't necessarily mean that you're passionate about your product or service. So going back to EOS and the 100,000 companies that we've helped, when we look at what their passion is, when we help them rediscover it, it falls into 4 categories almost always. It's in the category of the customer or client or helping the end user. It's in the category of building an amazing organization with amazing culture. It's in the category of being innovative, creative, problem solving, creating stuff in the world, or it's in the category of competing, winning, crushing competitors. So it's rarely about the exact product or service. So the point in all of this is you've got to figure out what your passion is. And I believe you can turn any business, any passion into a business. I wholeheartedly believe that. And there's a whole other camp that doesn't believe that for a second and doesn't believe passion's necessary. Couldn't disagree with that more. So the point in that is you got to figure out what that is. And your passion tends to stem from a past wound, an experience, some kind of pain. And so my obsession to help entrepreneurs stems from helping my visionary entrepreneurial dad turn his business around. My passion for helping entrepreneurs in the making is to teach my 18-year-old insecure, mislabeled derelict, scared to death self, where I was this entrepreneur I had no idea that I was, and all my friends went off to college, and that was the last thing on the planet I was ever going to do. I just wanted to go to work and make money. And so it took me till I was 29 to realize what I was. And so through that experience and all that pain, that's why I'm teaching this to these people in the world, to solve that pain. That passion is so strong because of the pain that I lived and experienced for 11 years, being lost and confused.
I'm glad you told that story, because to me, a lot of successful entrepreneurs treat it as a journey. It's not just this one thing or this event, but almost sequences of events and learnings. What is your thought about the journey and constant evolution, like honing all 6 traits or bettering yourself? How do you view like the long-term view of entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So when in the long-term view, the 6 essential traits don't even come into play, because let's go back to confirm, glimpse, path, because now we've confirmed that you have them. So please, what I'm trying to do is a cautionary tale. I'm trying to tell the world, make sure you have them before you do this thing, because it's hard. Assuming you do, and I show you glimpse, it lights you up and you are ready to run and you don't look back. You know you have them. You're going to apply these 6 essential traits to everything you do going forward. And that takes us into path. And so when you talk about the long term, one of the chapters I write about, it's called Take Action, but Be Patient. And it's all about the power of 10-year thinking. And so I'm a fanatic about the long term. I'm trying to convince every entrepreneur in the making to think in multi-decade terms, think in 10-year timeframes, make decisions in 10-year timeframes. Because what I learned at 35 is when you think in 10-year timeframes, time slows down, you make better decisions, you become more peaceful, and ironically, you get there faster. And so when you talk about the long term, it is absolutely this iterative process of you just taking action, being patient, thinking long-term, and just doing your work, bringing value to the world. In some cases, the product or service you start with is going to get wiped out in 6 months, and you're going to have to completely reinvent. And in some cases, you're going to be lucky and it's going to last 20 years. Who the heck knows? Nobody knows. Look what COVID did in terms of wiping out lots of ideas, but it also spawned a lot of new ideas. So it's this constant process of making sure I know my customer, I know what their needs are, I know how to provide value, and just obsessing about making sure you're providing them value. And if you're forever providing them value, then you're going to be fine. And you're prompting me to share this heady thought. I don't share this much on podcasts because it's a little heady, but I'm going to try it because you're heady enough to get it. And maybe you can help interpret it if I don't communicate it well. But to your point about the long term, okay, so I have this teaching that I call the history of entrepreneurship and the things that change and the things that don't change. Okay. And if you can all grasp this out there, oh, you're going to be fine forever, assuming you have the 6 essential traits, because here's what has happened in history. So if we go back to 5,000 years of history of human beings, here's the entrepreneurial history. There are 2 things that are forever changing, and there are 2 things that absolutely never change. And so the 2 things that are forever changing are products and services. Okay. They're constantly changing. And so if we go back 100 years, it was buggy whips and telegraphs and horse and buggy and trains and whatever. 140 years, I should say. And if we look to the future, it's going to be putting people on Mars and plugging our brains into the cloud and who knows what. But products and services are forever changing. And so to know that, that's an aha, because it keeps you on your toes that your product and service is going to change. And so they change. And the second thing that changes constantly is methods of communication. So like I said, it was once telegraph, telephone, fax machine. Now it's texting, then it's email. And again, God only knows what it's going to be in the next 50 to 100 years. But the way that we communicate to our customers is forever changing. The things that never change is that people have wants and needs. They will always have wants and needs. And so a true entrepreneur with 6 essential traits, knowing that they're always paying attention to those wants and needs. And the second thing that never changes is you have to persuade them. So 100 years ago, the way we persuaded and the tools and vehicles we use to persuade and communicate are different. 100 years from now, different. The way we do that now is the way we do that now. But just know they're always going to need to be persuaded. And so forever, you're going to have to market, sell, close. That is the game that you're in. And so for somebody that stumbles into a business today and got lucky, if you don't understand this, you are going to get wiped out because you've got to forever stay on your toes. Again, because I'm answering your long game question for the long game. So I don't know if that answers it. I don't know if that made sense, but I'll trust your brain to tell me.
It made a ton of sense to me, and I'm a big fan. And something I've always been drawn to all of your work, especially Entrepreneurial Leap, was getting things down to foundational elements. And right there was a perfect example. If somebody can just understand what you do and how you tell people what you do, that's going to be constantly changing. And that's just an evolution of your business. But like, there are core principles you need to establish within your business that I see a lot probably with the solopreneurs or the self-employed. They don't adapt their marketing or market at all, and they don't know how to sell.
Yeah.
Which leads me to believe that like when the other one changes, which it always does, they don't keep up and they go out of business.
Exactly.
So I think it's an incredible foundational principle. And one of the things I did have a question with on that evolution, over that long term, if your passions evolve or change, how do you make sure that it aligns or stays congruent with the business? Or what changes do you make?
Yeah, that's great, because what I really believe is when you figure out your passion, like I said, you can turn your passion into any business. And I'm not so sure that the passion ever needs to change. But to the point we just talked about, the product and service is going to change. So my passion is all about helping entrepreneurs and helping entrepreneurs live their ideal lives. And I could literally do that 1,700 different ways. So if EOS that I created no longer has a need in the world, if this entrepreneurial leap thing that we're talking about today no longer has a need in the world, I'm going to come up with something else to help an entrepreneur live their ideal life. So my passion is never going to change. I think that's going to keep me busy for the next 50 years. I'm convinced of that. Again, the product may change, the service may change, but I don't think the passion's ever going to change. So even we teach this in EOS because we talk about you got to first discover your passion, purpose, cause. Those are the three words we use. And then you got to discover your niche. And we talk about how the passion, purpose, cause will always stay constant. And it's okay that the niche may change over time. And so that's that point. So that's my humble opinion about, the longevity of your passion.
How do you develop the self-awareness? And this might be a bit deeper question. So assuming these people have the traits, they've gone through the right steps, how do you assess the progress and when it's time to pivot or create something new? For example, going from EOS to then creating Entrepreneurial Leap. How do you make those decisions on going to the next stage, creating the next thing? What does it look like for you?
Yeah. So what's important to understand there is, I think there's two different questions going on in your question. And so the first is, when is it time to reinvent your product or service because there's no more need for it, to our earlier conversation. Mm-hmm. The current term is pivot, which drives me crazy, but I refuse to use that word in a sentence, but for when I'm knocking it. But it's because, again, my mind is always thinking like in 100-year time frame. That's just the cool word right now, but it's constantly evolving. So inherently in that's different. So the day your customers and clients don't want your product or service anymore, that's time to reinvent. Okay, but I think that's different because what you're asking, what I did is I spent 20 years building EOS worldwide. I spent 20 years creating EOS, writing 6 books, building a team of EOS implementers with my partner, Don. And when we got to 100 implementers, it was time to sell because it was not fun to me anymore. And so I spent 15 years building that and then working on selling it. And I sold 3 years ago. And so it was just time because it's not fun to me. Now it's a 500-person organization. There's nothing fun about that to me because I love fast-moving, scrappy little companies. And so now there are much smarter than people than me that run that, most of which are the leadership team we put in place, but they love running a 500-person company going to 1,000. I don't get it, but they love it. So the point there is it was time for me to move on, not because my product or service changed, but I need to create and build things. And truth be told, when I was 40, I said when I turned 50, I'm shifting 50% of my energy to a focus on entrepreneurs in the making. So I knew 10 years ahead of time that I was going to make this shift. I didn't know that I was going to sell the business, but selling the business made the most sense because it freed up my creativity to do what I'm doing now with Entrepreneurial Leap. And it's important to know that my work time is split 50-50, literally 50-50. Half my time, I'm still the EOS guy. I still have clients. I still do talks. I still own the books. I still own 12.5% of the company. I'm just not involved in the day-to-day whatsoever. And then the other 50% of my time is Entrepreneurial Leap and accomplishing this goal of impacting 1 million entrepreneurs in the making over the next 10 years.
That's an incredible transformation. I think, did you develop that self-awareness? Is it something that was innate, like that's complementary to one of the 6 traits?
I don't think it has anything to do with the 6 traits. I think it has more to do with OCD. I mentioned Kolbe before. There's another aspect of Kolbe, and you can learn about Kolbe at kolbe.com, KOLBE.com. There's another what they call mode that's called follow through. And I have a 6 out of 10 follow through, which means I have a detail orientation that's unusual. I'm a high quick start, as I mentioned earlier, as most entrepreneurs are, but they typically have a very low follow through. I have an unusual high follow through, high quick start, which gives me this detail orientation. So I'm a fanatic planner. You mentioned, my schedule. I mean, I'm very rigid about the way I run my life. I mean, I know how many days I'm taking off every year. I know how many days I'm working every year. And so I'm just a fanatic about it. And inherent in that and being a great planner, I know that when I turn 60, I'm going to be starting another project. I think 10 years is plenty, and so with these 6 essential traits, I started to get bored. I need to do something else. I need to create something else. And so hopefully I will have hit the million, launched this thing. It takes on a life of its own. And then I want to go do that next thing.
How do you balance that like drive and energy with the patience for 10 years? Because when I look at a lot of people, and most of the listeners are trying to figure out, how do I start my thing?
Mhm.
And they're not sure which angle to go, which is why I love the framework you have, is it's going to answer the questions. And for some, probably a lot, the answers don't,
Yeah.
which is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But how do you balance like this energy, this creative passion with the patience to get to 10-year thinking?
Well, what's important is it took me until age 35. So it was 35 years of screwing it up with impatience. I lost everything at 31. That's really important to know. So it's a lot of life lessons, a lot of getting my ass kicked, a lot of learning. But so it took me 35 years. That's most important. And some it will take 60 years. So I was fortunate enough to learn at what I consider 35 to be a very young age. Um, and I mean, I don't know. It's once I shifted to thinking in those kind of time frames, I just saw and felt what it did to myself and my body and my thinking and my planning, and literally things sped up. So it's this ironic yin yang conflict oxymoron. That's why I call it take action and be patient. I think that is 100% something you learn. But remember, I know who I'm talking to, which are these wild and crazy, hard charging entrepreneurs with 6 essential traits. So this is a lesson, not a trait, where I'm saying, okay, racehorse, now I'm going to rein you in a little bit, because if you really want to be great, try this discipline on. Think in 10-year time frame. So it's a learned discipline. I was blessed to learn it at 35, and now I'm trying to teach it to the world. That's the best way I can answer it.
Well, to your point about hating the pivot word, I see too many people try things and not wait long enough.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
they quit or change before they've given it enough time for a result to happen.
Right. And that solves this. And Bill Gates has an amazing quote that says, people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year, but underestimate what they can accomplish in 10 years. So yes, if you will just commit, especially these people with the 6 essential traits, they're so impatient, right? They give up, they get bored a year in. If you will hunker down and focus on something for 10 years, you will build an empire. You can build an empire in 10 years. Les Brown used to say, all I need is a good decade. So it's all you need is a good decade. So yes, it's about focus. It's about slowing down. It's about being patient, and you will get there.
One small point, how do they avoid some of these get quick rich? Because I don't believe it's possible if you want to build something that's lasting or truly makes an impact. How do they assess their decisions and staying true to like the passion, making the impact, building a real business?
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about that get rich quick thing. So I learned at 23 years old, and I've said this 7,000 times in the last 30 years, that there is no get rich quick, but there is get rich slow. And so what happened for me from 18 to 23 as this mislabeled derelict entrepreneur in the making, I tried a bunch of stuff. I lost all my money. I saved money, lost money, invested in stuff, tried stuff, started stuff. And I really thought I was going to be like a millionaire by, 25 or whatever. So at 23, I had my aha. That's when I literally uttered the words, there is no such thing as get rich quick. There's only get rich slow. So that's point one. And how you learn that is by experience, and so there I was at 23, piss broke and a failure by every definition. A lot of great learning experiences. So to your point, it's don't fall into the trap, because if we look at all of the people that got rich quick, which there are a lot of them, it's in the last 100 years, let's say there have been 1 million of them. But there's 7.5 billion people on this planet. And my million number is even high for effect, might be half that. So you have like a 0.01 chance of getting rich quick. If you look at the statistics and the millions and millions and millions and millions of people that tried to get rich quick. So statistically, the odds are against you. So knowing that going in, I had the aha at 23 when I just, again, focused on getting rich slow. I was a millionaire by 31. I was flat broke by 33. That's a whole nother podcast. So I screwed up and made a bunch of stupid investments during the dot-com crash. But from 23 to 31, I was a millionaire. Did some stupid things after that. So again, I was able to do that in 8 years. So you can do anything in 10 years.
So one thing I try to look at and try to just get people to understand is the correlation between making an impact and working on the thing you're passionate about. Because I believe when you have that type of alignment, you're going to be able to stomach the longer term.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start to see, or do you believe that like focusing on that impact is very different than when you have the self-intrinsic of I want to be rich?
Well, so, I bit my tongue when you brought this up earlier, and you brought it up again, and you asked, so I'm going to answer. So you said, I believe every entrepreneur or business owner has an obligation to make an impact. Did I quote you correctly, or did I edit anything you want in there? I don't agree with you, but what when I answered this, you're going to see that I pretty much do agree with you, but we're just looking at it different ways because, social entrepreneur, what is it? B corporation, all these crazy fluffy things that evolve over time. It was called something 100 years ago, going to be called something 100. What I believe is every entrepreneur I know, they are good. They are good people. And entrepreneurs employ 65% of this planet. Worst case, in North America, they employ 65% of the people. So merely by starting a business, they're making an impact. They are driving this economy. We can't live without them. They are everything in my mind, from an economic standpoint. So they're already making an impact. I don't think it's fair to put that expectation on all entrepreneurs that they have to make some kind of social impact, because I believe every entrepreneur makes a social impact. Mm-hmm. So I think the pendulum has swung way too far that the only entrepreneur should be a social entrepreneur. I don't buy that for a second. Now, here's where we agree, because every entrepreneur makes an impact, as I just said, by my humble opinion. Then there are the ones that really discover their passion and get really focused on their passion. And that's what we do with EOS. And that's what we've done with 100,000 companies. We've helped these wild and crazy visionary entrepreneurs realize and get back to, here's why I started this business. And with the clarity around that passion, now all of a sudden, every person, every process, every system in that organization is laser focused around driving that passion. Therefore, they're making even more of an impact. So they all make an impact, some a hell of a lot more than others, but in my humble opinion, they're all making an impact. And whether that entrepreneur donates their personal money and doesn't use the company to donate, or whether they donate all of their profits, que sera, man. It's your business. Don't let anybody tell you what the hell to do with your business. Do what the hell you want. Ignore what everybody else says. So let your freak flag fly and be yourself.
Honestly, that is the most true sense of what I meant when I say make an impact. I
had a feeling.
Yeah, I don't mean like the social, like I don't need you to save the planet, but being a core entrepreneur, you're going to hire people, which means you create opportunity for people to make money, to provide, to their ability to create a business is already going to impact the communities they're in.
Yeah.
And as they find that passion, I don't understand not-for-profits. Like, I think a business needs to be profitable to make an impact.
Yeah.
So I've always been biased.
But here's what's so important, though. The people that are trying to save the world and feed the world, and that's awesome. I mean, there's a collaborator I'm working with, an entrepreneur, that they've done this incredible thing in Africa where they figured out a system to get water in every single community, and they create an entrepreneur in that community who sets up this water system. Everybody pays like 2 cents a day. It's incredible. So what I'm saying is that was that entrepreneur's passion. And so
Yes.
thank God for those people. Nonprofits, I get it. I mean, I don't want to sit here and beat up all the different structures. What I'm saying is because all those people have the 6 essential traits. Do your thing and tune out what the world is trying to tell you you're supposed to be, because you're making an impact. Now, are there ruthless, evil entrepreneurs? Absolutely. And it's sad and it's horrible, but it's such a small number. It's a tiny, 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 tiny number. So anyway, there's my I'm off my soapbox now. You asked twice, so I had to go there.
No, I love it. And I share the same thing. And it's a hard one because I'm glad you brought it up the way you did, because I think more people need to know and should just go do your thing and you will impact the world.
Yeah. Here.
Before we get to the final question, what is the best place to find the book and learn more about becoming an entrepreneur in the making?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So the epicenter of all things Entrepreneurial Leap is eleap.com. So that's the website, e-leap.com. I'll say that again, e-leap.com. And what you will find there is that free assessment that I referenced. It's free. You can fill it out in 10 minutes. You'll get an answer. You score 90 or higher, you're probably an entrepreneur in the making. The other thing I would invite you to look at is something I call the 1, 2, 3 roadmap. And it's 3 very specific tools that take you through the confirm, glimpse, and path step to really help you think through a plan to start a better startup. And so what you do is you fill out the assessment. That's step 1. You fill out My Biz Match, which is a way to determine the perfect business that you're built for: size, type, all those wonderful factors. And then the third is My Vision Clarifier, which helps you then create a plan and a vision and a strategy for your business with a 90-day plan. And if you do those 3 things, it takes about an hour. Just click on 1, 2, 3 roadmap on the website. Very, very powerful thing to do for your mind and to help you really take that leap and start a better startup. And then the last thing I would say is you, Doug, are a collaborator of mine. You're one of 90 collaborators I have in the world, and we're looking for more collaborators. And so a collaborator is anyone who's out there teaching, coaching, helping, guiding entrepreneurs in the making. And so if anyone out there is interested in teaching this content to their audiences for free, no money changes hands. It's an open source, abundance-based model. All I ask is you give credit where credit's due. Click on the Become a Collaborator button, and I'd love to join forces with you.
I will make sure to put all the notes, and I can say firsthand, I have been doing this a long time, and it is the first time I've found a framework that is not over cumbersome. It's not some course telling you to create a course to sell a course to get rich quick. It is a legitimate, honest perspective from somebody who's been in the shoes of what we're aspiring to do. So thank you for putting it forward.
My pleasure, man.
The final question I have for you is, what is the one piece of advice or lesson you can share with the listeners to inspire them to find happiness in their pursuits?
Oh, so I already touched on it. So now I'm just going to go a little deeper into it. But my impassioned plea to the world is to be yourself. Let your freak flag fly, as I said a few minutes ago. And so, and it took me till I was in my 40s to really and truly fully be me and stop listening to all the noise and all of the judgment. And so, I am at a point in my life where I don't give 2 shits what anybody thinks about me, and it is freeing. And so to get to that place, it is incredibly freeing. And you're going to truly be your creative, happy self, which is going to be weird to 90% of the planet, okay? And you will experience judgment, but who cares? So, true happiness is being yourself and surrounding yourself with people that you love. And so just be you. Just be you.
Gino, this was awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Had a blast, Doug. You're a great guy.